We begin with our big story. Americans trapped in Gaza. Hundreds of Americans and other foreign nationals have left the Gaza Strip over the past several weeks, but the State Department has yet to secure safe passage for at least 350 American citizens stuck inside the besieged territory since Israel's war with Hamas began 2 months ago. Just some of the tens of thousands of civilians who are caught in the crossfire. Earlier, I spoke with Susan Abdelsalam, whose husband is stuck in Gaza and has been there since the start of the war. Susan, thank you so much for joining us and for your time today. We understand that your husband, Ramadan, traveled to Gaza in September to visit his family, that he hasn't been able to get out since. Where is he right now, and what has your communication with him been like?
Okay, he is in the central Gaza, in Maghazi, and the communication is real sketchy. It comes and goes. He tries to call me, and the call will drop. And, you know, it goes on like that for a while because there's no internet that keeps going down. What little they have is very weak. And so we have a very hard time for our communication.
It must be so stressful waiting for those calls, Susan.
Yes, it is very stressful because, frankly, if I don't hear from him, because with everything going on, then it just freaks me out. And, you know, I get very upset.
Tell us about Ramadan's attempts to try to get on the list that would allow him to leave Gaza through that Rafah border crossing. What has that process been like for both him and for you too?
Well, honestly, it was, I am the one that had to fill out the paperwork here from the state side. I had to fill out the paperwork, and then what happened, the Department of State had to send his name over to the Egyptian embassy, and then it's just a waiting game of them putting his name on this list to be able to leave across the border. He tried to leave several times, but each time he tried, he couldn't leave because he didn't have this number that you have to have off of this list to get across the border. So it's just a waiting game, and, you know, I have to monitor that list from this side in the States to be able to send him a text message if he ever gets on the list. And like today, there wasn't a list for anyone. I didn't see a list today at all for anyone to cross that border. And hopefully there'll be a list for tomorrow. I don't know, but sometimes they have lists for other countries and none for the United States, and it's so frustrating because they don't have a certain time that they put this list up, and I have to just keep checking this site to see if they have a list up, and it's very, very frustrating.
Well, and we've asked the State Department. They aren't commenting about Ramadan's specific case to us, but the State Department is saying that really only those whose names are on the list should even try to make their way to the Rafah crossing. Would he have a way of getting there? How would he get there if he does get to that step of getting his name on that list, as you so hope he does?
Well, at this point, we honestly don't know until his name shows up on the list. Then he will try to find a way to get there. Before it got too bad, when they was not bombing everywhere, he was able to get someone to take him. But now with no fuel for the cars and with all the bombing that's going on, and he told me today that Israel had that road that goes to the Rafah crossing blocked with tanks. So now I really honestly don't know how he's going to get there, but he'll have to figure it out. I don't know. It's just frustrating.
Susan, you and your husband will be celebrating your 43rd wedding anniversary in a few weeks. What kind of hope are you holding out for that he will get his name on the list, that he will get out. And what is your message as we speak here today to anyone from the U.S. government, from the international coalition working on this, as they hear your story?
Of course, I'm praying daily that every day his name will be on the list. I'm sorry. And when I have to send him a text message that his name didn't show up, he gets very upset because he actually feels like he's been let down as an American citizen to get out of Gaza.
He's a U.S. citizen, and you feel he's been let down?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think more could be done because, frankly, it wasn't like that before the war started. You had to be on a list to cross that border. You could just cross that border with your passport. But now it doesn't work that way. You have to have this number. And it just is so frustrating when your name doesn't come up on this list, who they list you cross. And, you know, it's just, he's very upset. Of course, when he went, all he took was summer clothing, and now it's turning winter over there, and he doesn't have warm clothing. And, of course, they have no heat. And it's, you know, very, I don't know. I think it's kind of ridiculous what's going on.
We appreciate you taking the time to, please don't apologize. Our prayers are with you. Susan Abdelsalam, thank you so much for your time, and we will continue to think of you and your husband and hope that you can reunite soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I just hope the State Department will do something to get him out of there. That's what I want.
Susan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's bring the big story to our panel. Joining us today is ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host Mike Muse, ABC News contributor and op-ed columnist for the Los Angeles Times, Elsie Granderson, ABC News national security and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy, and ABC News' Zareen Shah. Zareen, I want to start with you because you brought us Ramadan's story. You've been speaking with the families of so many of these American citizens like him who are trapped in Gaza. What stands out to you most as you're hearing these stories?
Yeah, Chelsea, thank you for that, and thank you for doing that interview. You know, I spoke to Susan as well, and the one thing she'll say is this is her first national interview. Many people feel forgotten. They feel like most people don't know that there are roughly still 350 American citizens still stuck in Gaza. They say they feel despair, grief. They just feel forgotten. And the second thing, you heard Susan talk about it, she says, I feel let down. They talk about the State Department. Look, the U.S. passport is arguably the strongest passport in the world, and they feel like the U.S. is not doing a good enough job getting their own citizens out of there. Some of them have said they don't get a response when they reach out. Some of them feel like they don't get empathy, and often they don't get answers. Then the third thing is that once Americans leave, they express that they are not happy, they are not joyful. They say that is a myth. They are relieved, but they are grieving. Many of them have lost so many family members, sometimes 50, 100 family members, and many know they could lose a lot more.
The grief just so clear. Mick, I want to go to you because you heard so much frustration from Susan. Are there concrete steps that the State Department and the Biden administration more broadly can take right now to expedite the efforts to bring Americans like her husband home?
So, Elizabeth, first, this is definitely troubling. Not only is the humanitarian situation getting worse, but the fighting is moving south, and it's likely going to end up right in Rafah, which is right where they're supposed to cross to get out. So something needs to be done immediately. This was supposed to already be agreed to by all the parties. I think the first thing needs to be done is to find out what the problem is. The State Department needs to realize who is stopping them from coming out. If it's our partners in Egypt and Israel, that needs to be fixed immediately. If it's Hamas, then essentially these 350 Americans are now hostages in Gaza. So that needs to be fixed and figured out immediately, and then the coordination needs to happen. Likely, they also need to come up with alternate ways to get out of Gaza, not just Rafah. There's several other crossings, Karam Salom, for example, they need to create some because we need to be able to get our citizens out of there and back home.
And as we've heard, LZ, I want to go to you. One of the issues that we heard, and Mick just alluded to it, is that these families just don't have the information. Do you feel like the lack of information that's out there, both for the families directly and for the public, is a barrier, and that the government needs to be doing a better job here?
Well, I mean, there are just so many other factors at play, beginning with, exactly to Nick's point, why exactly are they not being able to let out? Is Hamas controlling what's happening, or is this some processing issue? And because it's hard for the government to figure that out, obviously it's even harder for that to be communicated to the citizens who are waiting. And my heart just breaks for everyone who's trying to figure out what's going on with their family members who are trapped in Gaza. And there's a sense of hopelessness, obviously, with all of us as we're watching. But it's also an opportunity for us to remember that, one, we can't travel with fear, but we can travel more informed. And checking with the State Department, making sure that the areas that we're going to, checking what levels that they are. I just checked and realized that one of the countries I plan on visiting is a level 2. So just doing what you can do can help alleviate some of the stress of seeing the hopelessness all around.
That's a great point. And Mike, I do want to take a step back. It's been 2 months since Hamas's horrific attacks on Israel. We've heard so many of these devastating stories, and yet each of those families is going through such unique pain. How do you think the public and our job, as journalists, who can stay engaged and attentive in trying to tell these stories and not kind of try to just tune out the despair, and it's so hard to watch?
I think it's going to be even harder. When that interview that you did with Susan was really fantastic. I think the part that really struck me the most and upset me was when she said Ramadan was upset as an American that not enough was being done. And as Irene beautifully said, that U.S. passport is one of the most precious things that we can have. And I think every November when we go to an election and check a ballot, we're always trying to make our union much more perfect. And that is the power of what America is, and that we're always going to come for you. The thing that strikes me is how do we streamline everything that LZ and Mick mentioned? My question is to the State Department is, how do they streamline that process? It seems like the bottleneck is getting caught up with sending the code back and forth when the State Department knows that there is no Wi-Fi in Gaza, or at least it's spotty. And so to be able to communicate that is so challenging. So how can the State Department streamline it to make it easier to get people like Ramadan home?
All great questions, and all ones that we will keep asking. Thank you so much to all of you for being on our panel today.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.